Synology presents the Data Intelligence Dialogue in association with CNBC-TV18.
Hello and welcome to Synology presents the Data Intelligence Dialogue in association with CNBC-TV18. As artificial intelligence transforms industries at an unprecedented speed, scale and efficiency, organizations across the globe are confronting one critical question. Is their data infrastructure truly ready for the future? Because in today's world, success with artificial intelligence is no longer just about access to compute power or the volume of information. In fact, it's about the quality of data, the resilience of infrastructure, and the security of sensitive information, and ultimately, who controls that data that powers intelligence. From enterprise readiness and evolving cybersecurity risks to the growing importance of sovereign infrastructure and private AI ecosystems, the conversation around data is rapidly shifting from storage to strategy, and we shall be brainstorming exactly that on the theme, the AI data dilemma, readiness, control, and the rise of digital sovereignty. I am Ridhima Bhatnagar, and joining me today to decode this evolving landscape are three very special guests. Joanne Wang, Director of Synology Inc.'s International Business Department, is joining us virtually from Taiwan. Hi, Joanne. Good to have you with us.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
We also have Brijesh, Director of Deduce Technologies. Good to have you with us. And Rajiv, Director of Eagle, has also been kind enough to take out the time and joining us. Joanne, why don't I kickstart the conversation with you? While I was opening the show, and we said that we're, of course, beginning to understand the shift that we're seeing with the rise of artificial intelligence, right? AI is fundamentally redefining the way enterprises today are thinking about data itself. And as that rise is happening, we're seeing a shift that is happening from data volume to data quality and governance. So I want to understand and begin by understanding that, is that assessment today right? And are you seeing that shift as well?
Yes, absolutely. So I think everybody would agree that AI is still at this booming stage. A lot of difficulties are now becoming not just how do you store your data, it's actually how you think about your infrastructure, if it's ready to manage those data generated by AI. Is it ready to be audited? Is it ready to be restored when you need to? Is it ready to be governed when auditing teams are coming back to check on the data? So I think this is definitely a critical topic to discuss at this moment.
Absolutely. Brijesh, let me take the same question and taking on from what Joanne is also pointing out. So in fact, we're seeing that shift of not more data, but better data. Is that understanding correct?
Yes, better data is a big factor right now because see, the AI models that we have right now in the world, and as you would have seen, whether it's Anthropic or whether you're talking about, OpenAI or, Gemini for that matter, every company is coming up with new data models on a very regular basis. Some of them are launching every 2 weeks. But then the AI model is as good as the underlying what we call as the training data, right? So now I wouldn't say the fight, but the main challenge that all the companies are facing is how good a training data that they have, how good the data stories that they have. So the safety of data, security of data, and the sovereign rights of data, which country has what kind of data, how much of data is being stored or being shared, is now what is differentiating different AI models, and that is more and more becoming critical in our business, and that's what we kind of are seeing globally as well.
Absolutely. And Rajiv, taking on from what both Joanne and Brijesh are saying, is it fair to understand that enterprises don't just want to be about vast data lakes anymore, but looking at more about shaping their enterprises in being more trustworthy, more sovereign, more classified? Is that the shift that we're moving towards now?
That is the actual trend that we are catching on right now. Because if you look at the last 3 decades of how computing has been happening around the world, we are seeing a total ecosystem change. And this is not about yesterday morning. This has been evolving for the last couple of years. But today we have reached a situation, let's say 26 now, of where we are heading out. And the way the AI is being inducted into the various enterprises is amazing, the way it's going on. But we have to keep a caution, because what AI needs is not volume of data. It needs quality of data to work on. And it's so hungry. So it can create its own sets of virtual intelligence to be able to help us take inputs. And on the governance, yes, there are risks involved here because it can go out of hand.
Yeah.
The whole world is talking about it may go out of hand. And there are voices and concerns coming out from there. But I'm sure as human beings, we have been able to, control various things that happen in our ecosystems on the compute world. So I'm sure I'm confident of that.
But that's a good way to at least kickstart the conversation to understand a direction of where things are headed as well, right?
Yes.
Joanne, let me get you back in the conversation. And of course, something that I speak to almost every guest every time we speak about the shift that is happening is one about the readiness in terms of data storage, and the other is, of course, infrastructure. Because, of course, traditional enterprises that were made, they're also seeing themselves in a way of transition today, right? Is that correct? So I want to understand what is the understanding that you're getting in terms of the readiness and preparedness that enterprises today have in terms of either the right storage and even the data infrastructure that they need to move forward.
Right. So I think the initial part is more on if you have the enough data storage for you to scale when this data is generating faster than before with AI. But now it's more on if your storage of data is being well managed. Do you have a central platform to be able to manage thoroughly throughout the whole company? A lot of time when people are investing on AI at the moment, they're very focused on the technical of AI. But then they're also very excited to try different new things. Now, you forget that you may be trying new things with AI in one part, but the other on the other side, and yet they are not being well managed centrally. In the end of the day, when it comes to auditing or when you need to train your data to be more sufficient or proficient, then it's very hard to do that. So for people to really invest on data storage or data management, it's something that they have to definitely look into nowadays.
Yeah, it's very interesting to what Joanne is pointing out, right? While there is a lot of excitement on both sides, you also need to ensure that both these worlds meet at a very seamless position for us to go into the next phase, right? Like I was saying, because we're in a transition, traditional systems that per work might not cater to the needs of today, right? So how are enterprises adopting to that change, Brajesh?
Yeah, so in our business, I mean, we are in the mapping and data annotation business, which is to a very large extent the core of what many of the AI platforms are being built on. Now, what happens is, it's not just about capturing the data, but it's also about keeping it secure. So we capture a lot of street-level imagery, and we actually process that data for, our internal purpose and for our clients. So now suddenly, if we are capturing imagery in a country, let's give an example of India. If you're capturing the imagery, you cannot many times upload it on a cloud server because that is something that many of the government and regulations don't allow you to do that. And there's a lot of PII, the personal information identification that needs to be mapped. There's masking of data to be done. So now we are looking at having it on a private cloud, something inside within our company, right? And that's a data that we typically, we have a good relationship with Synology, so we're using many of their servers. So we actually store that data in our own company. At the same time, as Joanne was mentioning, there needs to be a very good access to the data because we have teams in multiple countries who are, many times accessing the data for their particular location. So that again has to be planned out in such a way that, there's a seamless integration of and access of data happening. So the whole purpose, the whole focus right now is about how do you ensure that data is accessible, secure at the same time, the cost is also a very important factor because many times when you're talking about cloud servers, you're talking about ingress and egress of data moving in, moving out, which again ends up adding a lot to your cost. So that is where how data is being stored, the whole data management strategy, both from a storage cost and from a privacy perspective, becomes very critical in this new world.
So Rajiv, just taking on from the points that he's pointing out, cost and pricing, of course, is one factor, and I wanted to get to that. How are enterprises pivoting with these new challenges as well while keeping the core fundamentals in place as well?
Well, if you look at the infrastructure side of it, the companies have been building on developing the infrastructure they would need. But like I was saying earlier, in the last couple of years, things have dramatically changed for the entire ecosystem, right? In the earlier days, the whole world was moving towards transformation to digital, right? But today, we are going back a step to take 3 steps forward, where we are now, looking at AI as the new challenge for the enterprises to induct into their infrastructure. So it's not going to be about large volumes of data being stacked. It's about how they are stacked, how they are siloed right now, and they're all mostly unstructured data that we are computing right now. AI doesn't understand that. AI needs quality. It's only from that quality that you can, build the sets, and from there it can give you the resultants.
Yeah.
So I would say that.
Okay, interesting. Joanne, of course, the other concern that is also, of course, being raised is in this transition phase is that because we are accessing more and more data on a, almost on a day-to-day basis, how are organizations and enterprises, again, ensuring that there is a lot of sensitive data that is being looked at as well? How does that remain protected? Because that becomes one pivotal challenge as we move forward, because this technology is still evolving as me and you speak.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there were some good points that were already brought out earlier. Nowadays, a couple of years ago, a lot of people are trying to say cloud first or moving to the cloud. But in probably last year, we also started noticing that people are actually moving back to on-prem. One big part is also placed on the privacy of AI. With AI, because it's doing a lot of computing on the cloud, but how do you actually safely store those generated data on your own premises, on your own assets, so that it prevents the risk of your business, basically. So that's actually something that we have been noticing a lot, that people are taking more steps now, how do they manage their AI environments with not just purely cloud, but also building it on-prem, on their premises, on their hands, to maintain that control.
And I agree with that shift that we're seeing, where they're understanding that this is not going to be enough. We need to have our own premises and safeguards as well. But how is that happening? Are you seeing challenges in implementing those as well, Brijesh?
No, I mean, it's whether they're challenges or not, but many times it's mandatory. Like, we work in countries like Saudi Arabia, in Vietnam, in India for that matter.
Where the governance laws.
Where the governance laws are there. We have very strict mapping policies that we have to follow, and that says the data cannot be taken outside the country. Now suddenly, the data has to be stored within the country, and that is where it becomes very critical in terms of, how do you store the data, how do you access it, how do you mask the data for that matter, because we, as I mentioned earlier, we are on the ground, we are collecting information where there's public walking around, there's number plates, there are people identification going on. So how do you mask that? How do you ensure that those private information is not even accessible to our own teams, right?
This is very interesting. So there are 2 points that essentially Brijesh is making. One, he's saying that you need to, within your own premises, have another layer that needs to be there as well. But what is also interesting to add is that these parameters that you're making are not general. They will differ from country to country, governance laws to governance laws. How do you adapt to all of that as well?
I think the most obvious way is to have a hybrid system, right? When you're talking about a hybrid system today, in the recent past, everything was being pushed onto the cloud. Now the cloud is a public. Now that public servers are governed by the various country laws, right? And those are the various concerns that are now coming to emerge to understand how do we have an operational survivability in terms of scenarios where the servers are not within your jurisdiction laws. So the hybrid model is the obvious way. So the companies have to look into how they are tracking their data, and what is the critical data, and what is the private data, and what is the public data, and how they're going to stack it in the cloud or in their own in-prem. So for us as a service provider, we're seeing this as a big opportunity where we can support and guide enterprises and help them create these hybrid environments.
Okay, lovely. So hybrid systems look like the way for the future, but at this point, I'll request all our guests to kindly hold on to their thoughts, as unfortunately, I do have to now slip into a very short break. But on the other side, we'll of course dive deeper into one of the biggest concerns in the artificial intelligence age, that is data security, infrastructure resilience, and most importantly, why enterprises across the world are rethinking control over their digital ecosystem. So stay tuned.
Synology presents the Data Intelligence Dialogue in association with CNBC-TV18. Synology presents the Data Intelligence Dialogue in association with CNBC-TV18.
Welcome back to Synology Presents the Data Intelligence Dialogue in association with CNBC-TV18. As organizations accelerate their AI adoption journeys, concerns around digital sovereignty and infrastructure control are becoming increasingly central to business continuity and national strategy alike. In this segment, we will discuss why governments and enterprises are prioritizing sovereign data ecosystems and what CIOs and technology leaders must do today to build resilient, future-ready infrastructure for the AI-driven world. Our lovely guests continue to be with us. Joanne, coming back to you, of course, now there is an increased focus as far as digital sovereignty is concerned. And we were speaking about this before we stepped into a short break, as well as to why this is now becoming even more paramount with the likes of government laws shifting from country to country. So I want to understand now from an enterprise perspective, as well as from government perspectives, the kind of shift that you're seeing and the kind of focus that you're now seeing in maintaining this sovereignty as we move forward.
Right. So data sovereignty used to be discussed mainly as a compliance issue, but today it's become an operational issue. In some cases, it's even a survival issue. So with geopolitical uncertainty, it depends on external technology providers how may organizations rethink and controls. So if you don't control your own data, the infrastructure behind it, you're probably exposed to risk that you won't be able to manage afterwards. So true sovereignty actually means that keeping sensitive workloads in your environments that you can manage.
Interesting. You know, Joanne said something very interesting, that you're moving from what was essentially a compliance operational issue to now survival. And that's right. You either do it or you perish, right? Yeah. Brajesh, but while this transition is happening, one, of course, I'm sure there is a lot of opportunity in it. But this increased focus, does it require an additional understanding of how your systems essentially work as well?
Yeah, and what actually is happening to take forward what Joanne mentioned, the challenge is, if you look into the AI models that we have in the world right now, earlier the model used to be very simple, saying that, can you do an English to French translation, right? This is something, 3 years back, 4 years back was something that almost every company was doing or trying it out, and we had a lot of translators and other tools available. Now people are going very hyper-local. Now let's talk about a case about India in particular. Now we're talking about languages like, Maithili, Santali, these are the languages which are core to the Indian culture. And, India as a country, with 1.5 billion people, we have like close to about 15,000 languages. So these micro languages become very critical for survival of Indian culture. And this is where now the governments are stepping in and saying that, hey, I want an AI model to be set up, but then I want to control that part because, I don't want it to be available to everybody. And, I mean, in a sense, I want to control the whole, news or, the nuances around it. So that is what is becoming very critical. And this is where, now we're seeing more and more controls being, coming in, storage, where the data is being stored, how it's being handled, how it's being transmitted, becoming very critical right now.
Yeah, I think I'll just add one more point, Rajiv, and I'll take that with you. With what Brajesh is saying is right. We're seeing an increased focus of not just where the data is stored and how it is being used, but most importantly, who does have access to that data as well, right? I think that's becoming a pivotal shift as well.
Yeah. Very much. So I agree to what Brajesh was saying in all this, because in AI, when such things happen, there's always a flux situation. So there's a for and there's an against in this flux. It's also throwing opportunities, not only for the people who are going in for the various transformations that they're doing, but it's also giving opportunities for cybersecurity arena.
Correct.
Right? So security becomes the prime concern, whether we are compliant or whether we are not compliant or we are going into the compliance. But security of the data also is paramount for what we are looking into this year starting. So I think this is going to be a very important chapter here.
Interesting. As I begin to, of course, wind up the discussion, Joanne, I want to understand from each one of you, while we've, of course, spoken what will define these future-ready systems, I also want to understand in one final takeaway, maybe in terms of what do you think will define in terms successful data strategy in this very AI-driven future that we're talking about?
Right. So successful AI data strategy means enabling AI at scale, but while keeping data trusted, secure, governed, and under your control.
crisp and short, but I think that's exactly what it's going to look like. Brijesh, what about you?
Yeah, same here. I mean, the key here is, to add to what Joanne mentioned, it's also about how do you handle the volume of data,
Yeah.
right? Because that is, again, something that's kind of going crazy right now. So how do you handle the volume of data, and how do you ensure that, it's safe and secure? Yes.
Raji, final word to you.
Well, the volumes are climbing, so we're looking beyond the petabytes.
Yeah.
And a good thing to know is that we're partnering with a company that's already evolving and with a lot of research going behind it, Synology I meant. And we are quite excited on this because as a service provider, it makes a lot of opportunities opening up for us afresh. But big data and concurrence is going to be the main game out here. And I think Synology is well in track to address those with their launch of their various new products in their portfolios.
Yeah.
And they're addressing it well. And obviously, they are going to be AI-ready equipments.
Yeah.
And we look forward to helping them out.
Absolutely. It's never about working in a silo, but collaborators and partners coming together as we tackle this very evolving and rapidly changing ecosystem. But at this point, unfortunately, I will have to wrap the conversation. One thing is very, very clear, and that has emerged from today's discussion, is that the future of artificial intelligence will not simply be defined by algorithms or processing power. It, in fact, will be defined by how intelligently, securely, and responsibly organizations, in fact, manage their data. From infrastructure readiness and resilient storage architecture to zero trust security frameworks, and of course, the growing importance of digital sovereignty. Enterprises today are navigating a rapidly evolving data landscape where control has become just as critical as innovation. And perhaps the biggest takeaway today is, in the AI-driven future, organizations cannot afford to treat data just as a passive asset anymore. Data must be curated, governed, protected, and strategically aligned with long-term businesses and resilience as well. So at this point, Joanne, I'd like to thank you for joining us all the way from Taiwan with all your inputs.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank the lovely gentlemen as well, Brijesh and Raji, for sharing their insights with us as well. Stay informed, stay secure, and stay future ready. Many thanks for watching.
Synology presents the Data Intelligence Dialogue in association with CNBC-TV18.